Welcome to the Show Me Strangeness Project, an ongoing effort to collect, present, and preserve memories and experiences of the people of Missouri with a focus on strange, supernatural, and superstitious subjects. In a modern world where magic can seem scarce, the aim of this project is to harken back to a time when tales, fears, and wonders were shared by a fireside. The hope is to celebrate and share the magical, mythical, mysterious side of Missouri. Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning into the Show Me Strangeness podcast. I'm your host, Anastasia. I am the creator and the sole operator of the Show Me Strangeness Project. If you aren't familiar, it's a personal project of mine to not only research history, folklore, superstition, haunted places in Missouri, but also I want to collect the people of Missouri's firsthand paranormal encounters and strange happenings and things like that. So, tonight we're going to listen to a recording of an interview I did with a man named Paul from St. Louis, and he's going to share some experiences that he had as a teenager in his family home. Some strange sounds and sights that were experienced by him and his family members. So let's go ahead and hear what Paul has to say. Are you from Missouri?
Yeah, I grew up in Baden in North City. That's where these things happened.
It's called Baden. What's it called?
Yeah, Baden, Baden. It's just a neighborhood in St. Louis.
Okay.
Baden was way north. I mean, you look at a map, and Baden is like at the top community right before you get into Bellefontaine Neighbors and Jennings and all that. And that's where I grew up. So in 1967, we moved from a 3-room house with 7 kids and my mom to a house not far away, about a mile and a half, and moved in with my aunt. And most of these stories happened, well, in fact, all the stories that I'm going to tell you happened there. And the time frame, it's funny because I've talked to my sisters about this many times, and nobody can give like a time frame. But we moved there in 1967, and so I would have been just starting 8th grade. I think these events happened sometime in 1973, 1974, at this house that we moved into. So I have 5 different things, the little stories that happened.
Okay.
And they start out small and they end up bigger. But we were all sitting around in the kitchen, and my aunt always had people over. So there were probably 7, 8, 9 people. And she had a schnauzer called Shotzi. And all of a sudden, Shotzi runs into the family room. So like there was a living room, a family room, or I'm sorry, a dining room, and then a living room. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the doorway between the dining room and the living room, all of a sudden she ran to that door. She's looking up at the top of the door and barking ferociously. And I mean, and we're like, what the hell is going on? Couldn't figure it out. Mm-hmm. And, we were like trying to shush her, and she finally stopped. That was one incident, which it was really weird to have a dog look up at a thing and bark.
Mm-hmm. In such a ferocious way, like you said.
Yeah. And then the second thing that happened was that same door, the middle of winter, and again, we had, always had family over. We were in the kitchen. All of a sudden, the door just slammed shut. And, no draft. Nobody came in through the front door to cause an air disturbance, and the door just, it's like somebody just slammed it with all their might. And we were like, whoa. I mean, that was, it scared us because doors just don't slam that loud. And, It's an old house in the city, so the doors were heavy. They weren't like, now they're pretty, if you have a hollow core door, those weren't hollow core, they were heavy doors. So now, third story, these are just little things. My sister Kathy lived up in the attic. It was fixed up, and my sister, and a couple of these stories happened with my sister-in-law, my brother's wife. We were in the family room talking. TV might have been on. And we hear this typewriter going, and this is like 10:30 at night. My sister goes up to bed, and she's always like, "You guys be quiet down here," because she was a light sleeper, hated to get woke up. And we can hear above us, which where her room was, a typewriter, and it was like the old manual typewriter with like a heavy carriage. And it went on, and Peggy was like, "This is weird. There's no typewriter up there. We didn't have a typewriter. I don't even know if we had one, but Kathy didn't have it up in her room." I went into the living room, and we had like a foyer, a small foyer that went outside to the front of the house. And her door to the attic was opposite of that front door. And I opened the door very quiet because I didn't want to wake her up. And I couldn't hear typing. Went back to the room, in the family room with my sister-in-law. Tick, 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 tick. You could hear the carriage slide back. And we were like, "This is really weird." We told her about it the next day, and she was like, "Guys, you're just trying to scare me. That didn't happen." I was like, "Okay," but it happened. Then the fourth thing that happened, and this was really creepy. Again, my sister-in-law in the family room. You know how when let's see, if somebody is above you in another room,
Mm-hmm.
and they were to move something or walk across the floor, you can kind of follow their footsteps or follow where they are, or if they're moving something.
Mm-hmm.
We're in there in the family room talking, and then all of a sudden, it was like somebody was dragging a very heavy piece of furniture across the room. And you could hear like the legs skipping across the floor, like boop, 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 boop. And it went like one direction and then back another direction. My sister, sound asleep upstairs.
Hmm.
I go to the bottom of the steps. It's pitch black up there, no movement, and I am not about to wake her up. In fact, I went back into the room, the family room, and Peggy said, my sister-in-law said, "What'd she say?" And I was like, "I'm not going to wake her up. She'd be pissed."
Yeah.
And sat back down, and all of a sudden it started again. And it lasted, I don't know, maybe, a minute, both episodes, and then it stopped. But there was no explanation on why we heard this crazy, heavy piece of furniture being moved across the room.
Would it have been in her room? Like where
It would have been in her room.
Okay. Creepy.
Yeah, you walk up the steps, and the room was to the right, so which was right above the family room. Like I said, it was carpeted, and she was the only one that slept there. Now, she did say two things that happened to her, and I didn't experience it. We had these dormers, and there was a dormer that faced the front of the street, the front of the house. There was this really creepy little door that it was only maybe 3 feet high, something like that, real heavy, a lot of insulation in it. And she said that she felt like there was something in that room, because there was a time when she was laying in bed, and she was frightened. She was afraid to move, and she felt like there was this force that was telling her to leave, to get out. And she eventually, she didn't get up because she was afraid to move and fell asleep. And that was her story. And then another time in the summertime, they only had a small air conditioner, and attics get really hot. So she slept downstairs one time on the sofa in the room below her room. She said she saw little white, gauzy looking things flying around the ceiling area.
Oh.
And she said it sounded like little kids giggling. I did not experience that.
That was in the living room?
In the living room, yeah.
Was that underneath her room? The ceiling was underneath the room or no?
Yeah, yeah, that would have been. Let me think here.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it took the whole top of the front half of the house, so it was a fairly big room.
Gotcha.
So the last thing that happened was really, really bizarre. It was a Wednesday because I remember because I happened to be watching Kojak. I don't know if you remember Kojak or not. Probably not.
I've heard of it. Is it a cop show?
It was a cop show. He
Okay.
sucked on a lollipop or something.
Okay.
It's a coochie coo baby or whatever, Kojak. So I had to go to work in the morning and I knew that I was low on gas. So I drove down on Broadway and I went to this gas station and I noticed my friend's car was across the street at another friend's house. Their both names were Gary. And because he had a real souped up orange Pinto, bright orange Pinto with fancy wheels on it. So I, noticed he was over there, but I got gas and I went back to the house. And I walked up the front steps, came through the foyer, very small foyer. The door to the attic is right there in that foyer. And I walked through the living room and I noticed a smell. I thought, well, that's weird. But I was 19, it was just kind of, you just blow it off. So I would go into the family room. I had the TV on Kojak. I watched Kojak. And my sister walked in like 5 minutes left in the show. Kathy, who lived upstairs, walked in. It was Kathy who experienced this stuff. And she says, "Oh," she goes, "I got to talk to you." And I was like, "Kathy, wait, the show's almost over. Wait until it's done." So she sat in the chair while the show ended. And as soon as it ended, I turned around and I said, "Kathy," I said, "what did you want?" And she said, "Did you notice the smell in the living room?" And I was like, "I did." I said, "It smelled like flowers." And she like reached out and touched my hand and she goes, "You noticed?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, it was kind of weird, but I didn't, no, I just kind of didn't think about it. So we went into the dining room, opened that door that slammed, the door that the dogs barked at. And you know how when you open a door, you can feel a rush of air coming at you?
Mm-hmm.
We opened the door and the smell of intense flower smell, roses, but it was like you walked into a floral shop. We walked in the living room. There was one candle, and it was an Avon frankincense scented candle. That was it. And I mean, it was overpowering. It was so strong. And we were like, this is really weird. We couldn't figure it out. And then we're like, we had no history on the house, but we were thinking we had a picture of our grandparents, their wedding picture hanging in a real nice frame in that room, in the living room. And we're like, does this have anything to do with their marriage, their birth, their death? And we looked it up and nothing coincided with that date at that time. So we went back into the family room. We closed that hall door, that door that slammed, went back into the family room and we started talking about it. We're trying to figure this out. Like, are we going crazy? Because it was so intense. So probably 5-10 minutes passed by where we went back in the room. It wasn't in the dining room. When we went back in, the smell was still extremely strong. We opened the door to her room, going up into the attic, and opened that up, and it wasn't up there. Like we could take 2 or 3 or 4 steps up, no smell. But as soon as you came down those 4 steps, powerful smell of flowers. So we went back into the family room, continued to talk, and then the phone rang, and it was her friend Nancy. And we were telling Nancy the story. And we were like, "Nancy, is there any way you would come over to the house? Because we want to make sure that we want to validate what's happening." She was like, "No, I'm not, I'm not coming out." And there's like, I don't know how many miles, 10 miles away. So I told Callie, I was like, "Well, I remember Gary being at Gary's house when I went to get gas. Maybe he's still there." So it was only like 5 or 6 blocks. And I got in my car, I drove down there, and sure enough, he's actually walking out of Gary's house. And I was like, "Gary," I said, "I need you to do me a favor." And he only lived 2 blocks from my house. where all this stuff was happening. And I said, Gary, I want you to come to, he knew the stories about, the typewriter and the furniture moving because we were good friends. And he was like, man, I don't want to do that. And I was like, come on, please, I really need to validate what we're experiencing. So he was like, oh, reluctantly, he was like, okay, I'll do it. So we walk up the steps to the porch, and I said, I want you to go first. And he goes, no, no, no. I said, you're not going to get hurt. Nothing's going to happen to you. He opened the door and he went, whoa, it smells like roses in here. And I was like, thank you. Because, Kathy and I were, siblings, but to have somebody else validate what we were experiencing. And he was like, you guys are playing a joke on me. And so, we went down the stairs to the basement. No smell down there. Went up to the attic, no smell there. Went into the dining room. It was just contained in that room. And he was like, there's got to be an explanation of, this. This is crazy. And we went in, actually opened up a bottle of wine because I needed to chill my nerves because I had to sleep there.
Yeah.
And my sister. And so we went back into the family room. We're talking about it, trying to figure things out. And I don't know how much time passed by, and we went back, and it was still there, but not as intense. So like 50% of the smell had kind of gone away, but it was extremely powerful. And then that was pretty much it.
Just that one time that happened.
So, well, another thing that I didn't experience, but my older sister happened to be living with us for a short while. And she used to work at this restaurant / bar not too far from the house. And she got off work. I was living in the basement of the house, and she came home and knocked on. It was like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Knocked on my bedroom door, and she goes, Paul. She goes, I need to talk to you. And I was like, I was sound asleep. Like, what do you want? She was like, that smell. She goes, it's down in my room. She was sleeping in a room below the living room. I was like, I am not going to do that because I had trouble. I mean, it really bothered me. And I don't know what the time frame was. It could have been weeks. It could have been months. I don't think it was years. But sometime after what my sister and Kathy and Gary Wally experienced, this was sometime after that. So I didn't get up. I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep if I go through this again. She goes, well, then I'm sleeping with you. And I was like, I don't care, come on in. So apparently, according to her, it happened again, which I believe her.
Yeah. Do you care if I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, sure.
So you don't know how old the house was? Do you say you didn't know the history of the house?
I could tell you that. I could look it up on Zillow.
Yeah, just curious.
Built in 1907.
Pretty old.
Definitely an old house. I mean, it had these big brick stones. It was all white.
Wow. So with the typewriter, when the typewriter happened, did it stop at some point, the sound, or did you just go to bed?
Yeah, no, it stopped.
Okay.
Yeah, both the typewriter stopped and the furniture moving just stopped for whatever reason. We don't know. I mean, why did it happen?
Yeah.
And that's the crazy. I mean, the furniture really bothered me.
Yeah.
That was really intense. Think about something heavy in your house that you just drug it all the way across a wooden floor, and but you could hear the legs skipping across the floor.
Yeah. And to know that someone's sleeping in the room where it's going on is weird.
Somebody's sleeping up there, and a light sleeper at that.
Yeah.
We told her these stories the next morning at breakfast, and she was like, she'd get mad at us. We're not trying to scare you. We're just telling you what happened. It's insane. So there was something in that house. Something happened. I don't know, because we made no connection whatsoever with the dates.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, who came home late at night and knocked on my bedroom door, weeks or months after that, she actually did a little bit of research on it and tried to find the old owner, and she couldn't come up with anything. So I don't know.
Yeah, what did you guys make of it? Were you thinking ghosts, or you just didn't know?
Definitely ghost.
Yeah.
Well, because I knew, I knew my sister's story about being freaked out that she felt this presence,
Yeah.
that something was in that room or in that little alcove, the dormer. This fear that she was almost being forced to leave
Hmm.
and too frightened to move. That, and then the ghost flying around the ceiling.
Yeah, that one's really spooky.
I remember her telling me that since it sounded like little kids, like giggling, didn't bother her as much. But that's creepy.
Yeah, it's really creepy. It's interesting how it seemed to be like all kind of in the same area, like her room, and then the ceiling under her room, and then the living room that was under her room.
Yeah, yeah. It was all right there. The door would have been like towards the front of the house.
Yeah. So have you had anything else happen like that? Anything like that in your life? Just that house?
Those are only things that happened to me. I think, like I said, we lived like a mile and a half away before we moved in 1967. We lived in this really old house. I don't even know when that thing was built, probably around the same time. But my mom told me that when I think it was our Uncle Louis, when he died, right before they got a phone call, they saw something like a ghost or something gauzy white, like circling around them. And then it left the room. And then they got the phone call and then that he had passed away.
Wow. I thought you were gonna say that with the when you smelled the flowers. I thought you were gonna say that.
Oh,
So you got
no,
a phone call and someone died.
no. Well, that's the scary thing. That's what's funny that you said that because we remembered that story that my mom told. And when this flower smell was going on and the phone rang, I was like, I'm not getting this phone call. So
Right.
my sister answered it and happened to be her friend. But we were like, so the phone, we were thinking maybe somebody, passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, were there any places around where you grew up that were like people said were haunted, or you would go if you wanted to have like a spooky, it was like Halloween, you're like, oh, let's go drive down to, or in any places like that?
No, not really. The house that I grew up in, it was creepy.
Mhm.
The basement, really creepy. I don't know. It had a coal bin and we used to shovel coal and for heat. But I never experienced anything there. And I would have thought if any place, that would have been the place. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was kind of old and run down and
What's your kind of take on this kind of thing, like the supernatural and stuff?
oh, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally believe in ghosts, no doubt about it.
Mhm.
I did a haunted tour over in Alton. Would have been in 92, 93. You go to the place and they have like a meal, and then the paranormal person gets up and they talk about all the stuff and that. And then they give you like the little sticks and I don't know what they call all that stuff.
Like dowsing rod kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so some people had that stuff, and we got on this bus, and they took us around to like there's a Confederate cemetery over there. There was a house where the nanny threw one of the twin kids down a flight of steps and died.
God.
And we were actually, there were, I don't know how many people, 25, 30 people that were part of this. And not everybody was in the same room at the same time. So I was in there were two boys, no, it was a boy and a girl. And I can't remember which one died, but I was in the room and the person in charge of this said, if you experience anything out of the ordinary, just let somebody know. Here in this kid's bedroom, I am assuming the one that passed away. And I'm walking through, and all of a sudden, this is now, of course, this is right around Halloween, so it's cold out. It's a big house, a big old house in Alton with the two or maybe even three stories. All of a sudden, I felt this incredible cold spot, like somebody opened the freezer door and it was like right in the middle of the room. And I was like, I don't know if anybody else feels this, but there's a cold spot here. People came over and like, oh my God, yeah. I can feel it. That was the only thing that I experienced out of all that, but it was fun. So I told the gal in charge of this thing the story about the flowers, the smell of the roses, flowers in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, oh, wasn't that a wonderful experience? And I was like, no, it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
That anytime you have something that smells good, that it's a good ghost. It's a good what's another word for a ghost? But
Like a presence or something.
yeah, it's actually
Yeah.
a good thing. Now I have a cousin that lived down in Hillsboro. She had a really bad experience with ghosts in their house. So there was the ghost would show up at the side of her bed, and they were dressed in kind of like Little House on the Prairie kind of clothing.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and
Mm-hmm.
the mom and the daughter, and the mom said it was my husband that killed us, or something like that.
Oh, geez.
And and her daughter would play with the ghost kid.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I totally believe this because my cousin would I mean, we weren't like really close, but she wasn't like some goofball. She had a right mind. And she said she couldn't go down in their basement because anytime she went down there would be that horrible smell, and she felt like this person was gonna like kill her. Like she threatened, like kind of like my sister felt,
Yeah.
where the presence was like, get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she felt. And she would not go downstairs. It's funny because my older brother, he was in town and he had heard the story and he was like, oh, wait, I want to go. Let's get a hold of her. So he reached out to her and she was like, this stuff ended like 6 months ago. I do not want to stir it back up, because he was going to go to Ouija board,
Oh, no.
seance kind of thing and all that. But the crazy thing is her husband came home one time, and their 18, 17-year-old son was leaning against his car outside the house, had a baseball bat in his hand, and he said, I am never going in that house again, because he got scared by something that happened there. That shit's real. I mean, I totally believe all that because, of what's happened to me.
Yeah. That was enough to set you believing.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing all that with me.
Yeah.
You're a good storyteller too.
Oh, okay. Well, I've told them so many times. All right. Well, I hope I was helpful.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye. All right, now I'm just going to kind of reflect a little bit on what we talked about and what Paul shared. So it's always impactful when animals react in such a way, right? I think many of us have seen our pets have some strange behavior like this, where maybe they focus on a corner of the room where nothing is there, but it seems like they're observing something. It seems like they can see things that we can't. In this case, the dog, Shotzi, had a very aggressive reaction to something above a doorway. So to just offhandedly stare is one thing for a dog, but to ferociously bark, that's pretty weird when you can see that there's nothing there, but their attention is focused in one particular spot. Of course, animals have a whole different sensory experience than we do. Visually, the way they smell, the way they hear. So maybe they do see things that we can't see. Whether that's a ghost or something else, I don't know. But it's just a fact that dogs have different perception than humans do. To me, the noises in Paul's sister's bedroom, especially the loud furniture moving, was really creepy due to the fact that there was a person sleeping in the room where it was going on. And as he said, his sister was a light sleeper, so the fact that she didn't hear this, it's weird, right? And then there was the flower smell. I made this comment later that as soon as he started talking about it, I thought for sure he was going to say that they were going to get some news of someone passing away. Floral smells are really something that's prominent in hauntings. I feel like usually it's said to imply that there's some sort of presence there. Maybe people will say, oh, I smelled my grandmother's perfume. That was this very distinct floral smell. I know somebody who says that they always smell flowers before someone that they know is going to pass away. So I'm not sure if that's something that's common, or maybe just because I know someone who says that, I thought of it. Paul did say that the phone rang while they were investigating the smell, which turned out to be his sister's friend, but that he instantly thought when he heard the phone ring, like, I'm not picking that up, because he thought that there was going to be some sort of bad news. I tried to look into Missouri folklore to see if there was any kind of superstition surrounding smelling flowers and death, and I couldn't find one. But it's something that you do hear when people talk about ghosts and hauntings. And then I decided to keep the parts about the Alton haunted tours that he described in, because, I don't know, I was thinking maybe there will be one day in the future where people look back on this antiquated activity of ghost tours. It's like we look back on spiritualism, seances, and table turning and things like that. I hope not. I really enjoy ghost tours. It's something I would love to do personally. I just find them very fun, at least to keep, in the vein of this project that I have, keep these kind of stories alive. And you can also integrate history in the tours, because you're often in these very historic places. And, well, there's history everywhere, right? So, of course, I want to say thank you again to Paul for sharing his story. I think he told the stories really well, and is a very compelling, entertaining storyteller. Thank you so much for listening, and in any interest you may have in the project, you can go to the website at showmestrangeness.com. There will also be a link in the description of wherever you're listening to help you get there. At this point, the project is very new, so I'm working all the time to develop it, but you can definitely read stories there. I'm hoping to transcribe as many as I can into audio. I'm also hoping, if they're not there by the time you're listening, things I hope to do on the website are put suggested reading lists of books into Missouri hauntings and legends and history. I want to make little spotlights and files of places in Missouri and all the history and legends that I can collect on them. That's of interest to people who like spooky stuff like myself. Anyway, it's always developing. If you have any thoughts, if you have any suggestions, if you have any stories, please let me know. You can get a hold of me through email at showmestrangeness@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and good night.